All right, so we're going to work on value tables for compound woofs. And in my opinion, this is where it starts to get really interesting because we're actually able to see now where we can hold a lot of information in these woofs. And then that information from inside of that woof, we can tease out some very basic concepts that are actually kind of go a little bit hidden. So the idea being that an entire woof is going to either be positive or negative, plus or minus, right? And in this way, we can actually start to see where a woof can represent maybe an even more complex idea, where P and R, and if you substitute out P, you could break it open into a much larger woof with several different operators and several value structures. And then if P becomes negative and R becomes positive, right, then the whole thing, if you'll remember, the only time and can be positive is if both are positive. So in this case, the entire thing, maybe this is some big long thing and that equals P, and this is some big long thing that equals R, and the entire thing is negative. So it gets pretty interesting, but we won't get that complicated just now. So we'll jump into this, and let's go ahead and grab, what are we going to do today? We'll do cantaloupe. Let's see if we can see that. All right, so cantaloupe, and we'll grab our pen here. Okay, so let's start out with our woof. Let's do P, if P, R, okay, and remember our little roof, R. Okay? No, you know what? I'm making a mistake there. I wanted to make this a Q. Oops. So let's make that a Q. It kind of looks like a Q now. Here, I'll erase it and we'll make it a little clearer. Sorry, I actually wanted three different letters. So we'll do Q. All right. So the first thing we do is we count the letters, right? We got 1, 2, 3. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to set up our value table, right? And we're going to create our index. And the first rule is that we need to understand that to figure out how many rows our value table is going to have, we take the number of our our value holders. In this case, we have 3 of them, and we call that n. So n equals 3, and the number of rows, right? Number of rows equals 2 to the n. So in this case, it equals 2 to the third. And if you guys have since this isn't a math course, we'll just cheat, and that means actually, that means 2 times 2 times 2. That's what 2 to the third means, okay? And so 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 equals 8. So our value table is going to have 8 rows. Okay, so we'll get started, and then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to list them out in order. Now, I actually put them in order, but if it was P, if P, R, and Q, then we'd want to actually roll them out, and we're just going to list them here in the index in alphabetical order. And that's just kind of a sanity thing. We don't want to get too confused. It's going to get confusing enough. So we list them out P, Q, and R. All right. Now we're actually going to need a bit of room. Oops. Here, let me see if I can draw a straighter line. That's going to be good enough. All right. So we know we're going to have 8 rows here. So I'll mark them here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's our 8 rows. Okay, so in our first row, we're going to do 1/2 positive, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1/2 negative, 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty basic. And then we split this in half, and now we're going to do 1/4. Right, now we're going to do 1/4. You can see where we got these 2. If you know what we're talking about, we start thinking about powers of 2. So 1/4 is going to be positive. So we'll go positive, positive. That's 1/4, or 2 of 8, and then negative, and then positive, and then negative. Okay, so there's a quarter. See that? Here's 1/4. Here's 1/4. Here's 1/4. And here's our last quarter. Okay, and in this one we have our, here's half, and here's the other half. Okay, so that's going to get kind of confusing to have those, so I just want you to see that. I'm going to go ahead and erase those little those braces. I don't want that to get too cluttered. Alright, and then R, we're going to go 1/8. Well, we have 8, so we're just going to alternate. So we'll go plus and minus, plus, minus, plus, minus, plus, minus. Alright, so we start to see, you can see here in this first row, we're working out pretty good, right? This first row we're starting to look like we've got all pluses, right? And down here we got all negatives, right? And then everywhere in between we've got some different combination. Okay, so we've got our index set up. So now we're actually going to break it apart, and we're going to grab the first thing in parentheses. We're going to work from the inside out, as we've done in the past. Okay, so we'll remove our parentheses, and now we're going to evaluate if P, Q. Okay, so if PQ, and we have to go back to our implication operator axiom, right? And what? So if you remember our axiom for the implication operator, then you'll remember that the only way that the WFS is negative is if the first part is plus and then the second part is negative. Okay, so if the first part is negative, and then let's see, if the first part is positive and the second part is negative. So let's find one where the P is positive and the Q is negative. And those will be our negatives. So P is negative, Q, or like P is positive. Sorry, even I have trouble with these sometimes. P is positive, Q is negative, right? So P is positive, Q is negative, and that's going to be our minus. Okay, so these guys up here, they're going to be plus. Okay, so again, right below it, we've got another one where the first part is positive, second part is negative. That makes it negative. Okay, then and those are our only ones where we have that situation. So we know that everybody else is plus, or every other row is plus. Okay, so there's our first. We just evaluated the first one, you know, and it might be a little easier. I kind of put it under this P. It'd be better. Let's see. You know, I'm going to do that. Sorry, I'm trying not to be too difficult here. But I want to put it right in front, right under this operator, almost as if we're dropping this operator down. So it's not, it gets confusing enough that I don't want anyone to get lost here. So here we go. So we'll do this again. Here's our negatives, remember? And then everybody else, every other row is positive. Okay. So now we've got that first one. So here's our first column, second column, third column. This here is our fourth column. Our last column is going to evaluate on the AND portion of this WFS, right? So we have P, if P, Q, that value, and R. Okay, so we're actually evaluating on this operator now. Do you remember our AND operator, right? AND operator makes the WFS positive only if and only if both parts are positive. Okay, so we're going to have to look here. Here, this is all positive. So that's positive. Anywhere we see a negative, we know it's a negative. There's a negative. We know those are negatives, right? Because we saw those negatives. There's a negative there. Both. Let's see. There we go. Sorry, there we go. There's two positives. Negative, positive, negative, positive, 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 negative, positive, negative. Let's make sure I did that right. So positive, positive, positive. There's a negative, there's a negative. Those are your negatives. So there you go. So now we've evaluated the values that this woof can hold here in column. Ooh, that was bad. Column 5. Okay. So at this point, you can see we could make a much larger woof, and we just have to make more rows and more columns, and we just keep evaluating it, and we just go back to our last column, and we move forward, right? And we just keep moving forward, or moving down the rows, and these are all the values that this can hold. So this truth table exists for this entire woof, and you know, it's as you can see when I'm trying to teach it, it's actually a little harder to keep straight what I'm doing. But when you're sitting there with a paper in front of you, you should be able to see how it starts to fall out pretty straightforwardly. It actually isn't that complicated. But if you do get tripped up, go ahead and drop me a line. I'll see if I can help you out. All right. Good luck.